Hi, my name is Walter Tan. I'm the Solution Development Manager for Avid Asia Pacific. So basically I manage the product Media Composer, News Cutter, Avid DS, and also the Symphony products, basically all the professional products for Avid professional editing line. So what we see here today, we're going to show you a quick run through of our Media Composer. This is version 5.5, which we launched this year just before NAB. So once you launch the application, this is where we're at now. This is actually the projects selection. So from Media Composer, from the ground up, we are actually designed for multi-user. So as editor, you can understand that whenever you edit, you would like to actually design your own interface, how things are like, where the icons are, where the buttons are. But quite often or not, when you're in a many users environment, now that gets changed quite often when you hand over a suite. So the last thing you want the next morning when you come in, things become, oh, where's my button and things like that. So for Media Composer, each user can have its own kind of profile that can be set in the Media Composer. So that particular profile can also be stored on a thumb drive, or you can store it on the network. So when you move from suite to suite, or you come in another day, it just doesn't look right, just load out the profile. It'll be exactly how you would like the day before when you are finished editing. So you can see projects here. So we have the producer profile. You can create new profile, or you can import the profile that has been used before. Now from here, these are the different projects. You have private projects for projects that is secure. You don't want anybody else to see that. You can have the private projects. Shared projects, we know that a lot of productions, not necessarily there's one editor that's working on it. So on a shared project level, so multiple editors can open the same project and work on that. Now finally, external. Now we often hear editors that say, oh, my machine crashed, I lost my project. But if you were to store it externally, maybe on an external drive or a RAID protected drive, or in fact, nowadays you can store it on a shared storage, that we get your project all protected without losing anything. Right. So if you want to start a new project, all you need to do is click the new projects. So it comes out, give it a name. For example, Broadcast Asia 2011. Now, of course, we support all the industrial standard format. We have the SD, NTSA PAL, 720p, and all the way to all the 1080i, 1080p projects that are all supported. Now, we also support the HD RGB 444 profile with RGB 709. So if users would like to work with Multicam SR 444, we do support that natively in Media Composer. Now, for example, if you were working with XDCam, now XDCam, some of the early XDCam models, they are not full raster, so they are 14:4 1080. We also support that in Media Composer natively. Now one of the key differentiation for Media Composer with other editors is that we do have a matchback option. So if you are working with film, materials that's been telecine, materials are from physical film, we do also have the matchback functionality when you're editing in video, but you're able to match back in the 35mm film, 16mm film, with key codes matchback for negative cutting, which later we can actually export negative cutting list for the negative cutter to cut that film or what you edited on the non-linear system. All right, so let's jump into a project which I predetermined. That's a project like this one to show you a little bit on editing on Media Composer using this particular project on Multicam. So now let's start from the beginning. How do we ingest material? Of course, we get a good old baseband ingest. So if we start a new bin, now we call it bins because early on, 20 years ago, when we started Media Composer, we're trying to move the film editors to the world of non-linear editing using computers, which allow them to have more creativity in terms of how they cut. And we don't have to say starting from the linear way, or starting from start to the end. We can start to work in the middle, start from the end, and work non-linearly. So that is something we try to move the film editors. So there's a lot of terminology in Media Composer which is actually work from that era of film cutting. So we call it bin. But naturally, we don't call it we call it bins because there are a lot more things what the bin can actually consist. Now, if you want to do an ingest from baseband, simply just go to capture mode. You have a capture mode here. We can enable your video tracks, audio tracks. Now, where it's stored, whether it's going to be a local storage or over to a shared storage, all the different resolution you can actually capture in, and then you have the depth control. Now, we also can do logging, so we can log the shots first, then later do batch capture. But nowadays, we are already done away with tapes. So we have all gone to file-based ingest. So how are we going to do file-based ingest in Media Composer? Now we have a plug-in technology in Media Composer called AMA. So Avid stands for Avid Media Access. Now with media access, very simply, whether we want to bring in materials that is volume based, for example XD cam or P2 cards. Now the reasons why volume, because some of the metadata is actually written on the root level of the folders, but not on the essence file like the XD cam OP1A files. So it can be in some XML file where we want to capture all those metadata into the Media Composer. The very important for Media Composer is that the way we handle metadata is that we preserve them, whether it's from source all the way we finish output, all this metadata we preserve and able to be translated from state to state without loss. Now I'm going to now try to bring in a XDCAM material. I'm just going to navigate to my drive. So what you see here, now we support a lot of file-based materials nowadays. For example, recently we started to support the Canon XF format. We also support the DSLR, digital SLR video formats in QuickTime H.264. Now, quite wonderfully, we also support the ProRes media from Final Cut. So materials that's ingested by Final Cut or materials ingested by Aja, KeyPro, all these materials can also be brought into Media Composer very quickly without any transcoding and reading its own native format in the source material drive. We also support RED materials, like for example, RED, we also natively support them so that we can open up the raw RED code files, open up the SDK, so we can actually start to manipulate parameters of the raw data. Right, so now open up the XDCAM. I'm going to press open. Like straight away, you can see very quickly it populates up the bin and with all the metadata in the Media Composer. Now, for example, things like when the disk was initialized, even the camera serial number, they're all being captured in the bin itself. So once it's loaded in, quickly you can actually drag and drop it into the source monitor. You can start to play that back in real time. It will play that material. Now let's explain a little bit more on the bin itself. So naturally capturing file base is very easy on Media Composer. Now we call it bin because it's actually a lot more than a folder. Now we have a simple brief view. You can see all the standard metadata, duration, tracks, start time. Now we go to the text view, get a little bit more metadata. But what is more interesting is the frame view. Now in the frame view, I can start to see these materials. I can highlight them. Now this is not, you can enlarge this if you like. Now each of these are not an icon. Quite a lot of all this NLE out there is just an icon, and quite often not when you start to ingest material, and that first hit frame does not quite represent what is actually the name itself. So editors will have difficulty trying to find materials that doesn't have that hit frame that looks like what is the name it is, the content of it. So in the Media Composer, this is live video. I can hit play with JKL.
Speed and marker.
So while it's playing right now, I can hit the I and O for in and out. So I already placed an in and out point inside my bin. If I drag this into my source monitor, you actually can see the in and out points being marked in there. And take note also, if there is any metadata recorded by the camera, for example camera start, it appears as locators inside the Media Composer. So should in the XDCAM camcorder, the cameraman indicate certain information of the clip using their marker, it also appears in Media Composer as a locator. So for the editor, a lot easier to look for that shot. I've done the first and second and third shot, so what I need to do is just select the whole lot, 1, 2, 3 in the order. I drag it into my timeline. That I have finished my first card. So in Media Composer, editing not only starts on the timeline, in fact, you can even start within the bin itself. You can start to shortlist the shot we want, mark in and mark out, drag them to the timeline, you're done with the first card. So speed is everything on Media Composer. Now these are shots that is done on Multicam. Now Media Composer also does Multicam very well. Now let's going to group this bunch of shots together to create a live card on the nonlinear system. I'm just going to select them, go to my bin and do a group click. So we know that some of these cameras, they don't start and stop at the same time in terms of the time code. So we can actually use an in point or out point at the sync to sync them together. In this case here, I know that the time code are all the same, so I can use source time code and press OK to create a multicam shot. So I just drop this into my source monitor, I turn on multicam. I drop this whole multicam onto my timeline. So what we have here is a preparation to go into multicam editing. So I can right mouse click to change the camera shot very easily. Let's say I want to start as a wide angle shot instead, I can do that. So by all the 3 shots here, camera 1, 2 and 3 are mapped into my keyboards. F9, F10, F11, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. So by pressing these 3 buttons, I can cut from shot to shot. Let the music roll up. So by hitting F9, F10, F11, I can change a shot on the fly. And all this is done in real time. Okay, we're going to stop that. So very quickly we can do a quick cut like that. Now, should any of the shot you need to change, again, right mouse click, you can change the different camera views very easily on the timeline. Now, trim is very simple. Just like Final Cut or Adobe, we can actually also trim on the timeline. Should we need to move the shots around? Very simply by selecting the clip. We have 2 modes that we have, either the override mode or the lift mode. We can move clips around very easily, drag and drop. Or we do have the Avid traditional way of moving clips, is by selecting the override or the splice tool to move the clip. Now the reason we do that, because in this case here it's only a very simple sequence, but however when the sequence gets complicated, we want the editor to make a very decisive move, say I want to move that clip moving into that mode, move that clip as what is being decided. But sometimes by having it able to manipulate clips on the timeline very easily like that, in a very complex sequence, you may end up moving away 1 frame and you do not know about that. However, with modern editors, we prefer to have things moving quicker on the timeline. So even Avid now also have the same style like Final Cut or Adobe. They're able to do direct timeline manipulation, whether moving clips around, sorting clips around, even the trim were also very modernized than before. So Avid, we do have an edit mode. You can go to a trim mode. Now trim mode with all these buttons here, you can trim frame by frame, moving different frame forward. You can loop play so they can see your cut, whether it's okay or not okay. And the duration of the loop, it can be determined here. Now, we also do have a little bit more in-depth trim, we call the 6-window trim. For example, if I will add and dissolve in this portion here. Now, for example, when you try to play that and there is a black frame in the dissolve, you're wondering where is that black frame come from. So in the trim mode, we do have a 6-window trim which allows you, this is the incoming, the preceding clip, and this is the outgoing clip. Now should you see any of these clips that looks different from the others, you know there is the black frame is in the before clip or after clip. Alright, so with very deep trim tool in Media Composer. So we are very much also modernized, just like all the other editors. So don't be afraid that although we are in software for a long time, but we are very much modernized just like many other editors. You'll be very familiar with if you start to work with Media Composer.